Alright, in this tutorial we're just going to go over a lot of the basic functions of the displacement tool on Hammer. Now as you can see, I've already generated polygonal faces along this rock wall. I haven't done anything with it yet, but that's just to match up with this other version that I'm going to create here. So how you want to go about doing this to generate it on one of your brush faces is you just want to select with your face edit sheet system and just select one of the brush faces. And then just head over to the Displacement tab. Now, as you can see, there's not much open on these options because you have to create the surface. Now, for how many polygons you want, if you want it to be really detailed, you set it to 4. Now, if you want it to the medium range, as I'm going to use, I use 3. On larger maps, like really large, say with vast forest or beaches, you want to use something more like a 2. Because unless it has a lot of dips and dives in it, you're really not going to notice the difference at all, and it'll help your performance by a lot. And by and large, in these factors, you just have to decide on how big your map's going to be, and then you can decide how many polygons you want to fill it with. Otherwise, in very small maps where there's little to no displacements, you can probably get away with the 4 and have some nice looking terrain. So here I go and create my terrain, and now you can see it's all generated. Doesn't take too long with just one surface. With a lot more, that might take longer, so don't be worried if your computer might lag that. So alright, I got my surface now selected, and head over to displacement. Now as you can see, I don't have any, it doesn't look like I have it selected because you can choose your masks on what you want to see. Now since I'm going to just start with the paint geometry tool, I'm going to just keep my my grid open on this so I can see that. Now, I already have most of my options selected here, but the most important things is your radius, which is my big sphere you can see out here, and I choose it at a 100 because that's great, you know, for larger areas and such. And distance, 1 is fine. I almost always choose 1 because you can just kind of click and just tweak things just about to the way you want. But for very, very large things, you might want to even choose higher values. Now, for your axis, what's important about this is the Z-axis is fine for the terrain, but if you're editing something, say like this wall over here, you might want to choose something more like the X-axis or Y. Well, actually, you will be forced to. So, and for these, smoothing generally is just for if you want to, you know, smooth over a lot of bumps and everything, and it'll regulate and bring the vertexes somewhere just kind of in the middle between each other. So it'll just kind of smooth things out, as the title states. Now, raise to, it kind of works as to what its design says, and generally you just set a number in your distance, but it doesn't always work the best, and generally it's only useful if you want to bring your edges together at exact points. And raise and lower is generally what you want to use if you're just working on a single axis for just general editing, and that's what I'm using now. And to raise and lower the terrain, to lower it, you use your left click. Actually, no, that's to raise it. Sorry. And your right click is to lower it. Now, for my surface here, I'm just going to create a small hill. Not very, you know, detailed or anything, but that's all I'm using for the tutorial. Now that's pretty good. And as you can see, it doesn't really match this rock wall because, well, it's just, you know, that basic texture. Most old games you might even notice would look like this. But that's why, especially in Source, we have our Paint Alpha. And you have to have special textures enabled with this, otherwise you're not going to get anything on a regular texture. So you have to get either already made assets, say in Valve games, or have to create your own by scratch. Now I'm already using a Valve texture, so I'm just taking it the easy way right now. Now our Paint Alpha tool, it's just very simple. You basically can just paint anything you want like this. And it's the same basic features as far as the buttons go, like your paint geometry. Left click will toggle one side of the alpha, while your right click will do just the opposite. And so then you can just kind of paint your terrain, you know, just kind of how you want. You know, and you can really bring some of that out. And sometimes this can take a while. because you can tweak exactly how much you apply on this, and it can come to different looks, just generally however you want it. And as you can see, that looks alright. And now one of the most important features that I find with this is, say I come over here and I paint my geometry in a way where away from my other wall the seams don't match up. And on my other wall, if I were to want to keep all these edges lined up, a very handy tool in Hammer is the sew button. And as you can see, it just pulled all my edges together. Very handy feature with a lot of displacements. Now all I did was just hit the button once I had my displacements selected. Something you might want to take into consideration is to go into your tools. Once you're out of the selection here, is to select your faces and your displacements and hit group, because then you can select it as a whole, and it's much easier to avoid mistakes that way. And now I can edit my rock face while still keeping the edges lined up with this other displacement for the ground. Now the only slight difference is I have to change my point of axis. Now sometimes you just kind of got to click around to figure out, and I just figured out that I got to use the y-axis for this. You can pull it out in different areas, sink it in for a nice canyon look to it. Very handy tool at bringing natural worlds to life. And then once you have all your displacements selected, you can even start morphing the way the connections look. You could even put some dips in there and stuff. Now I didn't exactly take my time with it, but as you can see, it comes to look fairly good without even taking much effort. Now with a lot more tweaking and editing, you can take out a lot of the spiking that you can see from farther out vertexes. But that's just the basic uses of this. So, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope it comes to some use to you.